Good evening, my friends, and welcome to the Bucklerverse Halloween special. I am your host, podcasting's Count Buckula, and I now have to make a brief pause to remove the fangs that I'm wearing for the benefit of the YouTube viewers. All the YouTube viewers are getting quite a treat. All the listeners are getting is a very uncomfortable experience right now. Let me get these teeth out. They're expensive ones and all. There you go. Right. Welcome, my friends. It's my favourite time of year. It's Halloween. Oh my God, I love it. My first desire in show business, the first job that I wanted as a child was to be a late night horror host. You know what I mean? Like Criswell or Vampirella or, someone of that nature to appear and, good evening, tonight's tale of terror concerns some people caught on a lonely road. And introduce old horror films. That's what I really wanted to do in my life. I would have been happy to do so, but what can I say? Like all the best things of show business, it belongs to the past. But that doesn't really. There isn't really a horror host. There's not really a contemporary horror host now, is there? I can't think of one. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. There's a few on here though. Some great ones on YouTube. I quite like Newcastle After Dark. Find them because they put up like some really cracking horror films, old ones from back in the day, and they break it up a little bit to get around the legal, and they introduce it from their sort of lair, wherever that happens to be. Newcastle, I'm guessing, not on Tyne. Newcastle in America. It's not Hawaii horror. It's, oh God, that's going to get cut. Or left in. Spontaneous comedy, no censor here. I'm going to talk on today's little pop culture podcast about just a few films on my Halloween playlist. I like to have a few lined up for the weekend of Halloween. They tend to be classic horror as well we're going to be looking at today because, see, Halloween, I'm a horror fan. I'm a general horror. I love horror, all of it. It's no secret, my love for Wolf Creek. Let me have a little sip of my Halloween tea because I've been gasping for a brew and you can't drink with those teeth in. Delicious. So, I love Wolf Creek, for example. Cracking horror franchise, but not Halloween-y. That's more of a summer confection. Halloween, you want horse-drawn carriages and heaving bosoms and, the moon, the full moon with the clouds scudding across. You know what I mean? You want castles and, you want hammer is what I'm saying to you. And that's where we're starting because I have been listening to something utterly incredible. I didn't even know it existed. I want to share it with you. There was an unproduced Hammer script for a part of their Dracula franchise. The Hammer Dracula franchise is an absolute thing of beauty. If you've not seen it, I insist that you do. It's wonderful. But it went off the rails. It's no secret that the law of diminishing returns is very apparent in these films. Horror of Dracula, the first one, exceptional. Dracula, Prince of Darkness, possibly its equal. Dracula has risen from the grave. Good. Still good, still watchable. Taste the blood of Dracula. We're starting to get on thin ice here. Scars of Dracula. Let's not mention that. Scars of Dracula's where it proper lost the plot. So, Taste the Blood of Dracula, which is the fourth in the franchise, was supposed to be a reboot because Christopher Lee was pissed off with the whole thing. Hilariously. He'd had enough. He played the part too many times. He wanted to expand his range. Brilliant actor, Christopher Lee, by the way. Never met him, but saw him through a shop window once. I was walking up Shaftesbury Avenue past the cinema store. He was doing a signing. And I could see him in there. And I thought, I want to go in there and get a Christopher Lee autograph. That would be part of the collection. But then I could see what he was signing the autographs in that way where his head was down. He wasn't looking up. He was just signing it and handing it off like that. Just signing. There was no chat or banter. And I'd heard tell from friends in the industry that he was pissed off talking about it. And I'd had a similar experience with Leonard Nimoy. He signed my autograph, but he did not want to know. And it was a little bit, all right, Leonard. I did not want that from Christopher, so I chose to walk on and keep my memories, and I've regretted that ever since. But Scars of Dracula was supposed to be a reboot for the series because Christopher wanted out. So the plan was that young Ralph Bates, who I knew from the sitcom Dear John, he was going to be the new Hammer Dracula, a young Dracula, a sexy Dracula. Good actor. Appalling choice for the Count, in my opinion, but a good actor, solid. They started making it with him, and the idea was that he was going to be a disciple of Dracula's who did a ritual, drank the blood of Dracula, hence the title, and then became possessed by Dracula, and moving forward would be the new Dracula in the series. And Hammer's American distributors got one sniff of this script idea and went, you can stick that up your ass. Like, we want Dracula's Christopher Lee. You get him back by any means necessary. So instead of being possessed by Christopher Lee's Dracula, Ralph Bates, via an appalling special effect, turns into Christopher Lee's Dracula, and the franchise continues. And to quote the great Christopher Lee, because they went to Christopher Lee, said, please be Dracula. He said no. They laid on the guilt. Terence Fisher laid it on a bit thick with the guilt. Oh, there's other people in the production, won't be able to work if we don't make this film. Think of the livelihoods lost. So Christopher Lee did it to provide work, for the rest of the crew, according to him. And as he says, and that is the only reason that I did them. The only reason. I'm sure he was recompensed. But Scars of Dracula, the one after that, is embarrassing. That's the one where Dracula dies by mistake. So this is the level. Dennis Waterman's in it for a start, and does not sing the theme tune, slightly disappointingly. But he does appear in it, and Dracula dies by mistake. There's a great scene on top of the castle at the end. Dracula's got this metal spike he's picked up. He's about to impale Waterman. Then lightning strikes the spike and sets fire to him. All it needs is the Curb Your Enthusiasm's theme to kick in. He falls down the thing. So Hammer were at an impasse. They wanted to bring some freshness to this franchise. And they had a script. I think it was called something like Dracula and the Brides of Carly or something. But the idea was to relocate the character and the action from London, where we left him, to was it Transylvania? No, it was London. No, it wasn't. It was London in Scar. Yes, this is the weirdness. He dies in London in Taste the Blood of Dracula. Scars of Dracula. For some reason, he's back on Transylvania. I'm not quite sure how that happens. They weren't really one for continuity. So that was the plan. Take the camp to India, lovely exotic locations, and they wrote this script, really rich, great Dracula script that would have been, but just proved too expensive to do. Massively expensive undertaking. So instead, they went with Dracula AD 1972, which is a much cheaper film to produce because it was literally, the previous films in the franchise have been set in Victorian times, but this one would be set now, and they could film it literally up the road, which they did. So Dracula is resurrected, but he's resurrected in then modern and now, 1972, weird. It's still a period piece now, but at the time it wasn't. And it's very much, gone is dun 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 dun. That's the Hammer Dracula film score. That's the Dracula theme, present in all the other films, but now replaced with waka 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 dan 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 waka 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 waka. Awful, awful. Dracula resurrected by Johnny Alucard. Oh God, spell his name backwards. Who'd have thunk it? So this script, though, the Dracula and the Brides of Carly is lost, no more, never going anywhere. Until about 5 years ago, I didn't know about this. I found out about this from watching Dark Corners reviews. If you're a YouTube person, go and watch Dark Corners reviews. They are brilliant. My favourite, easily one of my top 3 follows on here. Every Monday a bad movie review, and they do very, very good high-end documentaries. They've done one about the Hammer Dracula series. This is how I found out about this. It's a BBC drama. Get it on Audible and iTunes. It's a fully cast radio production of that script, and it's been renamed The Unquenchable Thirst of Dracula. And it is sublime. I've been listening to it. I've listened to it 3 times already. It is brilliant. It stars Michael Sheen as the narrator. So he's basically reading out, the bits in the script that aren't characters. We find ourselves in Transylvania, where a young girl... we find ourselves in India, where where a young girl arrives at a station. Boop! Brilliant sound effects, fantastic music. Brilliant cast, led by Michael Sheen. And forgive me, I'm going to say this wrong. Is it Mira Syal from the Kumars at number 42? And goodness gracious me, Indian actress. I always mispronounce her surname, and I apologise. But she's the female. It's wonderful. She's like the leader of the Kali cult. She plays about 4 parts in it, but that's the main one. Wonderful cast. This is off the cuff comedy, mate. I'm not doing this from notes. I haven't got the cast written down. Forgive me, I'm going on memory. And very interestingly, Dracula. Forgive me coughing. I'm choking on glue from them fangs. Dracula is played by Lewis MacLeod. Lewis MacLeod is a stand-up comedian impressionist, and he's the reason I'm sitting here, if I'm honest with you. Because when I was about 17 years old, working in a theatre box office, desperate to get in show business, no idea how, practising card tricks, and Lewis MacLeod was in our pantomime. At the time, he was a Saturday morning kids presenter, and I saw him at the bar, and I went and chatted to him about stuff, and that was the first time I ever heard the phrase, the comedy circuit. I had no idea it even existed. And he said to me, you should give that a go. You should that's the place to try things out. Go and buy a copy of Time Out, get the phone numbers, get your open spots, and away you go. And he taught me through how to get on the comedy circuit. Never met him since. And one day I will see him again, because I don't see why I wouldn't. We've got mutual friends and that. I will see him again and thank him properly. But in this, he's basically playing Christopher Lee playing Dracula, and the voice is perfect. You took her from me! I mean, it's a real angry Dracula as well. Dracula's he's unpleasant in this. This is not your love song for a vampire Dracula. He's not, mourning for his lost love. Or he's not looking for, having just said the words, you took her from me. He's referring to his dinner in that scene, not his lost love. He's literally referring to his dinner. But in this, he's angry, he's rageful, and he's in pursuit of what he wants. He's gone to India to kind of start again. Things happen. It's spectacular. And the ending, I mean, given that at the end of Scars of Dracula, he dies by mistake because clearly budget didn't allow for a final confront. That's the thing about the Christopher Lee Dracula. The death scenes. He goes out in the death scene in Horror of the Dracula being killed scene in Horror of Dracula has never been surpassed. It is phenomenal. The very iconic scene of Peter Cushing, spoilers for a film from 1958. Peter Cushing as Van Helsing running down the length of that dining room table, ripping the giant curtains down. Dracula trapped in the sunlight. He's trying to crawl for the shadows. Cushing stops him by grabbing 2 silver candlesticks and forming the crucifix. The music swelling. Dun, 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 forcing him back into the sunlight. As he goes back, he starts to melt, burn. It's a phenomenal, dramatic climax to a film. Dracula, Prince of Darkness on the ice. Dracula on the frozen moat of Castle Dracula. The priest shoots out the ice from beneath him. He can drown the beast. The thing is a spectacular scene. That nearly killed the stuntman, by the way. When they were filming it, the stuntman in full regalia, he slid down into the water under the ice, but the water filled up his cape and dragged him right down. Big rescue operation. Amazing. But spectacular. Dracula's risen from the grave. Another one. He falls off a thing. He plummets. He's in blood, gore. Then you get to when the budget started running out. And you can tell because, Taste the Blood of Dracula, he just sort of dies in a church because he ends up standing in front of he just sort of dies. It's not really. I can't even tell you how he dies. Watch that film and tell me how he dies, because I can't work it out. He's in a church, a disused church. In front of a stained glass window, and then he for no reason, goes, and turns to ashes. I'd love to know why. And then Scars of Dracula, he dies of embarrassment. Dracula AD sort of falls over his own shoes into a hole. It gets, and it's not good. But the end of this, that I won't spoil, you can see, this would take modern day effects to achieve. It's quite a dramatic way for the Count to meet his maker. It's superb. I loved it. I've loved it. 3 times I've listened to it. I've got no doubt I'll listen to it again. That's the first of my Halloween picks. The Unquenchable Thirst of Dracula. Or indeed any of the Christopher Lee Dracula franchise. You'll find them on Amazon, mate. The early ones especially, they're all worth it. Superb work. What else will I be watching this weekend? I've also got my yearly viewing of The Bride of Frankenstein. I always put that on. I've got the whole Universal Monsters box set. It's a weird passion of mine that I share with a mate, Pete Furman, the comedy magician. Wonderful comedy magician. And we both got this love. We sort of bonded over it, this love for the Universal horror franchise. This is going back, this predates Hammer. This is 1932. And the jewel even in that franchise's crown is The Bride of Frankenstein, the second in the Frankenstein series. But you can watch it without watching the first. You get a very nice little 5-minute recap at the start. It's Mary Shelley and Lord Byron sitting in the house going, on a stormy night, tell me, Mary, about your monsters. Was there more? There was more to the tale, Lord Byron. What? Then summon your horrors. And she starts telling them the story of The Bride of Frankenstein, where Henry Frankenstein, the scientist, because Frankenstein's the scientist, guys, not the monster, yeah, has survived his fall from the windmill at the end of the last one and is alive, as is the monster who survived the fire. And now Frankenstein is going to create, under pressure, under duress. Dr. Pretorius returns. Ernest Thesiger, I believe, is the actor. He returns into Frankenstein's life and blackmails him, basically. We'll make a woman. That should be really interesting. And they're going to make a bride for the monster. And the monster wants a friend. It is a beautiful film. Man, it stands up. It's Max Maven's favourite film, if you know that is. If you're a magician that listens to this, I don't know why you would be, because it's not a magic podcast, but some do. It's wonderful. I mean, that film, you could watch, it looks like it was made last week, you know? It's just a beautiful thing. Karloff, never better. He played the monster 3 times. And there's not, brilliant every single time. But that one's the one, because he really, every time he's on, he'll frighten you, but he'll break your heart. He'll make you jump. He'll surprise you. All in the same scene. You know, it's a flawless performance from Boris Karloff as the monster, and the monster speaks in this as well, which Karloff fought against. Karloff did not want the monster to speak. He felt that the creature should be a silent, always be silent. But the public wanted to hear his voice, and that's what they got. James Whale's decision. And that's when you see a star is born as well. In Frankenstein, Karloff was unknown. He was cast because of his looks. James Whale had come up against a brick wall trying to cast his monster after Bela Lugosi said no. And he ended up in the canteen at the Universal lot where Karloff was working on a gangster film or something. And Karloff had a dental plate that he'd taken out to eat. And when he took it out, his cheek would sink in. And the sunlight was hitting him, creating this weird effect. Just as Whale came in the door, Whale clocked him and saw his face and thought, that's it, that haunted face. There's my monster right there. Hide him on the spot. But in Frankenstein, Karloff is billed as, in the opening credits, the monster, ? And he's right at the bottom of the credits. Colin Clive top billing, down through the cast, right at the bottom, the monster, ? And then at the end credits, a good cast is worth repeating. And as they used to do, as they want in those days, there's the credits, and finally at the bottom, the monster Boris Karloff, right at the bottom, like an extra, which is how Bela Lugosi described the role when it was offered to him. This is a part for a half-wit extra. But then cut to Bride of Frankenstein, top billing, mate, and not even top, one word like bloody Adele, you know. Just Karloff at the top, big on the poster, Karloff, and on some of the posters, Karloff the Uncanny. And he owns it, and he brings it. Bride of Frankenstein is on my list. You will, if you've not seen it, check it. You will love it. What else is on my list? Well, Halloween's on my list. The John Carpenter Halloween. I'm not going to talk about that, and there's a reason. I'm going to go and see Halloween Ends at the cinema. I've not seen it yet, so I want to see that and then do an episode on the Halloween franchise. Like on its own, just riffs about that and, personal memories. So I'm saving that for the next episode. That's what got me into the whole Halloween vibe thing and pretty much set the course for my slightly goth leanings. I've always been a little bit of a goth, not a full goth, but that way inclined. It was all because of when I was growing up. My first horror film was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I was off sick from school at about the age of 5 or 6, and it was on one afternoon. And that was my first introduction to the Universal monsters, you know. I knew the images, you know, because all the classic monster images that you know, Dracula with the collar and the black cape, Frankenstein with the flat top head and the bolts in the neck, electrodes in his neck, guys. He's always depicted having bolts in his neck. They're not bolts, they're electrodes. It's how Frankenstein gets the lecky into him. The Wolfman, you know, those classic monsters. If I say those classic monsters, the first image you get, that image came from the Universal Monster series from the 1930s and 40s. And, yeah, that was my first. So my first introduction of that was BBC Two showed them late at night, you know, about 10 o'clock. And my mum would occasionally let me sort of stay up and watch them. So I did. The first one I ever saw of an adult nature was The Son of Frankenstein. I missed Lugosi's Dracula. I just missed it. This was back in the day. TV was on. You got it or you didn't. So I didn't see it. I wouldn't see that until I was about probably the last one that I watched. It's the first film of the Universal Monster series, but it's the last one that I ever actually saw. Son of Frankenstein and it's burned into my brain for one reason great, one not one great because it was my first time seeing Karloff as the monster, and he's good. Bride of Frankenstein, as I say, is the best. Son of Frankenstein, though, is perfectly brilliant. Basil Rathbone plays the son of Henry Frankenstein, who is charged with bringing the monster back by Igor, the monster's friend, played by Bela Lugosi. It was the first Lugosi film I saw as well. And arguably Bella's second greatest role after Dracula. And he does chew the scenery as Igor. He's amazing. Old Igor, with a broken neck. They tried to hang old Igor, but they failed. He is my friend. The monster, when you first meet him, he is my friend. He does things for me. Oh, Bella. Bella in his prime. Yeah, and then the other reason, I won't go into here, but yeah, it was a lot, yeah. But I love those Universal, so I always choose one of them for Halloween. This year it's most years it's Bride of Frankenstein when I've got choice. But yeah, nice. But how we do a time? Oh my God, we're on 25 minutes already. I've only just bloody started. Oh, come on, I might go a bit. It's Halloween. I'll talk a bit more. Halloween Ends is on the thing. What else we got? I might give it a bit of Boris Karloff as the Body Snatcher. That's a corking film. The Body Snatcher's a film from the same sort of... It's not a Universal film. I think it's RKO. But it's... And it's much more... No monsters. It's just a gothic story. A gothic horror story based on Burke and Hare. Essentially the Burke and Hare story, except that it's a fictitious body snatcher played by Boris Karloff dealing with a doctor. You'll never get rid of me, Tolly. And it builds to a brilliant climax. Obviously, because Karloff, the demand outweighs supply, so Karloff has to start getting the doctor some bodies via more nefarious means. Beautifully shot. One of my favourite moments in that film. It's perfect, all in silence, no score, black and white, starkly lit. And it's the little flower girl. She's in it as a character all the way through, and she sings as she's selling her flowers. And you just see her going home at night after her shift, but because it's dark, she's singing to keep herself cheerful. So you see her go down this alleyway singing. And then you see Karloff's horse and coach and horses. He's a cabbie. Is his day job. Just coming down the thing behind her, but you can still hear her singing. And the coach and horses disappears out of shot. And all you hear is the singing stops. That's it. And you know that murder has been done. That's it. But it's just so atmospheric and so well done. It's a beautiful film, a beautiful horror film. That's on my Halloween list this year as well. So I'm going to go with Bride of Frankenstein, one of the Hammer Draculas, probably the horror of. I fancy revisiting that. I'm going to stick in some Cushing as well. I'm a big fan of Peter Cushing, just generally. And I think this year's pick is going to be one of his Frankenstein films. Hammer's genius with the Frankenstein. All of these, by the way, they're going to get their own episodes because I could go on about all of these for hours. Hammer's Frankenstein series was genius. The Universal Frankenstein series concerned itself with the monster. The monster reappeared film after film after film, leading to the confusion about the name because the films had names like Son of Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein. But Baron Frankenstein's not in them anymore. So people think that's where the weird confusion that Frankenstein was the name of the monster came from. But the Hammer series focuses on the Baron. Baron Frankenstein is the recurring figure. And each film features another horrific experiment on his part. Sometimes he creates a monster. Sometimes he just does something despicable. Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed is one of my favourites. Because that's literally about him trying to... It turns out Frankenstein had a vile partner. And he's trying to get information out of said partner, but said partner is now, after various strokes, is now catatonic. So Frankenstein wants to get his brain out of his body and into a new body and fix it just so he can work with him again. But there's consequences to that, you know. One of which is once the guy's brain is fixed, he's no longer mad. And it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. He has a wife that doesn't know him anymore because he's in a different body, and Cushing's Frankenstein in that is a particular bastard. I mean, he gets nastier as the franchise goes on. That's the subtlety of it. If you watch them in order, he does get nastier and madder and more warped, but also more trapped in his own desire for these incredibly horrific experiments that he conducts. One of my favourite. Do you know what? It's hard to pick with the Cushing Frankensteins. I think I'm going to go with Frankenstein Created Woman, which is where his latest experiment, he's worked out how to trap a human soul. And which is what he does. But at the heart of this story is a very, very moving... It's a moving love story between just a simple lad and a girl who's unfortunately been born slightly disfigured. And three absolute arseholes who end up committing a murder and pinning it on the lad. He hangs for it. The girl kills herself, but the lad works for Baron Frankenstein. And then Frankenstein seizes this moment of opportunity, takes the boy's soul and puts it in the girl's body, whilst also correcting her deformities so that no one knows it's her. But he does not know what he has wrought, because the sort of weird, the hybrid that he's created seeks vengeance on these three pricks. It's a beautiful film, and Cushing is great in it. He really is great in this one. He's right at the point where Frankenstein is full mad, but still slightly sympathetic. I mean, he's still a nutter, but he's not the bastard he becomes in the later films. He's still got a little bit of a heart. Not much of one at all, actually. But he's still he's always a charismatic presence. But this is the last time you sort of root for him. At least I do. But then I root for the dark ones. You know what I mean? That's my thing. My friends, do you know what? This Halloween special's gone quick. My waffle has taken up all the time. So, do you know, and again, I'll tell you what, I don't give a toss. I love horror. I won't do the whole face again, but I'm going to do some shows just on specific films and talk about them and stuff from these particular franchises. That, though, is your Halloween Bucklerverse. And I'm going to leave you in a traditional way with the closing... Yes, this is what I'm going to do. The closing speech from Dracula, the Bela Lugosi version. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. A word before you go. We hope the memories of Dracula and Renfield won't give you bad dreams. So just a word of reassurance. When you get home tonight and the lights have been turned out, and you are afraid to look behind the curtains, and you dread to see a face appear at the window, why, just pull yourself together and remember that after all, there are such things. Happy Halloween, everybody. I'll see you on the next Bucklerverse.